Duchess, Glass Eyes Never Blink by M.R. Ray. Chapter 3. 2 days later, the day of the party arrived. It had been quiet since that night back in the living room and his staring contest with the stuffed cat. No movements, no purrs. He was believing it was all a figment of his imagination. Willie swatted at a bee hovering at the grill's edge. He'd never seen so many people in his backyard. Folding chairs, some still tagged, lined up along the house. A sagging table with a disposable cloth held bowls of chips and jugs of neon punch. The scent of cheap hot dogs and lighter fluid hung over the patio. Willie pressed down a row of wieners with the tongs, listening to the sizzle, letting it drown the party's noise. His own friends, or what passed for them, huddled at the far end of the yard. The red-haired guy from audit, Doug, that was his name, and the woman from payroll whose name he'd forgotten. They spoke in low voices, glancing at their phones. Neither had brought a spouse. Wanda's friends colonized the rest of the yard, laughing, shrieking, passing a bottle of something, probably spiked. He watched her work the clusters, hair loose and wild, a red and white striped shirt knotted high on her waist. She radiated. Nobody would believe she'd spent the morning in a ratty bathrobe, snapping at him to sweep the patio and not fuck up the grill this time. He took a drink of his beer, then checked the buns. They were black at the edges. He pulled them off, stacked them on a tray, and lined up the next batch.
Need help, man?
Doug appeared at his side. He wore a black jacket and jeans.
Nah, got it.
Willie said.
Nice day for a party.
Doug laughed, a single note.
Isn't it, though?
He nodded toward Wanda, now arm in arm with a tall, dark-haired man.
Your wife's the life of the party.
Yeah, I guess.
Willie said, the words sticking in his throat.
You see that guy with her?
Doug's voice dropped.
Is he with the sunglasses chick, or is he like a neighbor?
Willie followed the nod. The man wore a slim button-up and dark slacks. His sleeves rolled to show tanned forearms. He stood a full head taller than Wanda. Even from a distance, Willie noticed the expensive watch. The guy laughed, teeth white as in a toothpaste ad.
I don't know him,
Willie said.
Maybe you should.
Doug clapped him on the shoulder, then retreated to the shade. Willie watched as Wanda leaned in, touched the man's elbow, and said something that made him toss his head back. The man's posture reminded Willie of a politician or an anchor on cable news. Willie turned the hot dogs, feeling the heat sting his knuckles. He lined up the finished dogs on a paper plate, squirted a zigzag of ketchup down the row, and carried the plate toward the woman from payroll. She smiled, took one, and then went back to her phone. Willie looked at Wanda, who was giggling at something the tall man had said. He made his way over, standing beside Wanda.
And who might this be?
Willie said, letting the question hang.
Don't be silly. You've met him before.
Wanda's hand lingered on the man's sleeve, a flirtatious grin on her face. She looped her arm through the man's, leaning in closer. As Willie stepped closer, a faint, sharp scent cut through the heat and charcoal. The aftershave was clean and expensive, not his own. As the scent enveloped him, Willie could almost taste a metallic tang in his mouth, an unsettling blur of senses that felt more invasive than a simple smell. His pulse quickened with the odd sensation, reminiscent of the same trace he'd caught in their living room days earlier when the white sedan tore away from the curb. Wanda patted the man's shoulder, then turned to Willie.
Can you grab me a drink, babe? The punch. Avoid the vodka,
she said, touching her belly. Willie looked at her face pink from the sun. She held his gaze, then dropped it, turning to the man and saying something low. Willie walked back to the table, bottle clenched. Buster skirted the crowd, sniffing at a dropped hot dog. Willie bent to pick it up, but Buster darted away, tail stiff. The kitchen was empty. He filled a cup with punch. He heard laughter through the window. Wanda and the man were on the porch now, talking to a dark-haired woman. The man's hand rested on the small of Wanda's back. Willie brought out the drink and delivered it to Wanda. She took it without looking at him, eyes locked on the stranger. Willie stood there, waiting for her to acknowledge him. She didn't. He made his way to the ice chest and took a fresh beer, twisting the cap until the metal cut his palm. He wanted to watch the sunset, but the neighbors' trees blocked the horizon. It was his party, but then again it wasn't. He took a sip of his beer and sat down on one of the folding chairs. He wiped his hands on his jeans, feeling the sweat cool. String lights flickered on as the sun dipped behind the houses. The bulbs made perfect circles of yellow, each reflected in the glass door. Willie watched the lights, and in every reflection he saw the man's face, smiling, always looking just past him. Soon the backyard emptied. Willie stood, walked over to the grill, and poked at the charcoal with a stick, watching it collapse. A few guests lingered, but most had wandered inside. Someone had left a plate of half-eaten chips on the seat of his new chair. Willie stood by the grill, hands raw from the heat. Looking up, he didn't see Wanda. He assumed she was working the crowd or showing off the house. His ears strained, searching for her voice, but every laugh sounded the same now. Willie scanned the yard, checking every group. He made a slow loop around the house. The lights inside were on. Through the window, he saw people in the kitchen pouring drinks, laughing at something spilled on the counter. He didn't see Wanda. He checked the side gate, then the driveway, half expecting the white sedan from before. Nothing. He pushed through the sliding door into the kitchen. The tile was sticky under his shoes. Two guests he didn't recognize stood by the fridge, debating whether to open another bottle of wine.
Anyone seen Wanda?
Willie asked. They both shook their heads and pretended to be fascinated by the wine label. He scanned the breakfast nook, a couple of guests picking at cheese, crumbs scattered over the tablecloth. No tall man. No Wanda. Heat built behind his ears as he moved through the hallway, the kitchen, even the garage. Nothing. Only the litter of a party winding down. Empty cans, lipstick-smeared glasses. The backyard was empty now, the last guests clustering on the front lawn, their Uber apps glowing in the dark. He walked into the living room and stopped at the threshold. Buster sat in front of the fireplace, so still he could have been carved. His entire body faced the mantel, where the stuffed cat sat in its usual spot. The cat's glass eyes reflected the overhead light, and for a second, Willie thought he saw the pupils move. Not a blink, but a shift, left, then right, as if tracking him. Buster hadn't moved. Willie's fight or flight flared, pushing him to shout or move, but the instinct froze in his chest, held down by something heavier than fear. He froze in the room. The carpet seemed to hold his feet. The only sound Willie could hear was the ticking of the hallway clock, counting off each second. He looked at the dog, then back at the cat, then at his own hands. They were shaking. Willie stood behind Buster, not daring to touch, not daring to speak. He stared at the stuffed cat. At first, nothing happened. The cat was just a toy, legs curled under, tail pressed to one side, glass eyes set in a blank stare. But Willie stared longer, and something shifted. The fur along the flank seemed to ripple, just once. The chest, he would have sworn, rose and fell in a slow, deliberate breath. He blinked, shook his head, and then blinked again. He looked for a trick of the light, a draft, something to explain it. The glass eyes caught the reflection of the room. They noticed him too. As he shifted his weight, the cat's eyes did not lose him. If he moved left, the pupils tracked. If he moved right, the gaze followed. He found it impossible to look away. The dog growled, sharp and cut short. Again, the cat's chest moved, more pronounced this time. It was as if the cat was repositioning on an invisible cushion. The whole body shifted a bit. Willie's mouth went dry. He took a step back. The room swayed, and he steadied himself on the edge of the couch. Its glass eyes watched, unblinking. The voice came clear and cruel.
She swallowed him deep.
A slow twitch rippled through its tail, the tip curling and uncurling as if it were tasting the air. Beneath the faint hum of the clock, Willie thought he heard it, a low, steady purr, the kind you could feel in your bones more than hear. Buster's ears flattened and the growl in his throat deepened, vibrating against Willie's leg. A voice broke the trance.
There you are.
Wanda said from behind. He turned. She stood in the hallway, hair a tangled mess, cheeks flushed and damp. Her blouse, its crisp collar now askew, was unbuttoned one button too low, and her lipstick was a messy smear across her swollen lips, a faint wetness still at the corners of her mouth. She saw him staring and smiled, slow and heavy-lidded. Behind her, the tall man appeared. He wore no smile, just an upturned corner of his mouth, and his gaze went straight through Willie. He adjusted his waistband with 2 fingers, then leaned against the door jamb. Willie felt every part of his body at once, his scalp prickling, his hands numb, the sweat cold under his arms. He tried to answer, but the sound snagged in his throat. Wanda stepped forward, ignoring the dog and the cat.
You've been hiding in here,
She said. Her voice was too bright, too casual.
I was looking for you.
Willie managed. She tilted her head, a smile curling at the edges.
You're the one hiding in here. People probably think you left your own party.
The words landed light, almost teasing, but the edge underneath was there. She crossed to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and poured a glass of punch. She drank it fast, then poured another. The man followed her. Willie stood within the lounge, unsure whether he should follow or if he even could. He risked a glance at the mantel. The cat's head was tilted now, chin lifted, as if observing the scene with new interest. He tried to remember if it had always been that way. Wanda's laugh came from the kitchen. The man said something low, and she shrieked, not out of fear but pleasure. Willie heard the wet sound of lips, then the clink of a glass on the counter. He forced himself into the kitchen. Wanda was perched on the counter, legs swinging, glass in hand. The man stood close, one arm braced against the cabinet. They didn't notice Willie until he cleared his throat. Wanda looked at him, then at the man.
We were just talking,
She said too quickly.
Yeah, I guess.
Willie said. He held his beer like a weapon, the glass sticky in his grip. The man smiled.
Nice place you've got here.
Willie tried to smile back, but his face wouldn't cooperate. Wanda hopped off the counter. She grabbed a handful of chips, eating them one by one, each crunch loud in the small space. Willie turned and headed into the living room, settling into his chair, the cushion sagging where his weight had shaped it. The dog had not moved, and the cat still watched.